Emma's heart raced as she stood outside the grand hall, the soft glow of chandeliers spilling out into the evening sky. Tonight was her ex-boyfriend's wedding, and the memories of their time together felt like a storm inside her chest. She had loved Daniel once, truly and deeply, but life had other plans. He had moved on, and she had been left with the sting of betrayal and the emptiness of a broken heart. Yet tonight, she couldn't help but feel a mixture of curiosity and pain. She had promised herself she wouldn't attend, but curiosity had won, and with a plan forming in her mind, she had taken matters into her own hands. Emma wasn't the type to sit idly by, and if she couldn't have Daniel, she would make him notice her one last time, on her terms. The thought of showing up alone, looking like a vision of elegance in her crimson dress, wasn't enough. She needed something more, something that would make her appear untouchable, confident, and, most importantly, enviable. That's when she remembered the flyer she had seen weeks ago: professional companions available, discreet and charming. A giggle escaped her lips as the audacity of her own plan sank in. She picked up her phone and called the number, her fingers trembling slightly. Within the hour, a man arrived at her apartment, impeccably dressed, exuding an aura of confidence and sophistication that made her heart skip a beat. "I'm Alex," he said, his voice deep and smooth, his eyes scanning her with a calm intensity that both unsettled and intrigued her. She explained her plan, her desire to appear with a fiancé who could turn heads, and Alex listened without a hint of judgment, nodding as if he were perfectly accustomed to such unusual requests. By the time they left for the wedding, Emma felt a mix of excitement and nervousness she hadn't experienced in years. The valet opened the door to a sleek black limousine, and she realized that every detail had been thought of, every move calculated. Alex was charming, attentive, and most importantly, convincingly in love with her, at least for tonight. As they approached the grand hall, the sound of laughter and music floated through the air, and Emma felt a thrill of anticipation. She spotted Daniel immediately, laughing with his groomsmen, looking just as handsome and confident as she remembered. Her stomach twisted, but she straightened her shoulders and stepped forward, Alex's hand steadying hers. The moment they entered, heads turned, and whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Emma's plan was working, she was the center of attention, and with Alex by her side, she felt a surge of power she hadn't known she possessed. As the evening progressed, Alex proved to be more than just a charming facade. He knew exactly how to make small talk, how to compliment without overstepping, and how to command attention without arrogance. Emma was both impressed and unnervingly curious. There was something about him, something beneath the polished exterior, that hinted at a depth she couldn't quite place. When they finally reached the dance floor, Daniel's eyes met hers, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. His jaw tightened slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. Emma smiled, feeling a rush of satisfaction, and allowed Alex to lead her in a dance that drew the eyes of everyone around them. As the music played, she realized that this night was about more than revenge or jealousy, it was about reclaiming herself, her confidence, and her joy. But just as she began to relax, Alex leaned closer, his voice a low murmur that sent shivers down her spine. "You look incredible tonight," he said, and there was a weight in his words that made her heart race for reasons she didn't understand. Something about the way he said it, the certainty, the intensity, felt different from the usual empty compliments she had encountered in the past. It was as if he wasn't just playing a role, he was watching her, studying her, and seeing her in a way that cut deeper than she expected. The night continued, with laughter, dancing, and whispered comments from friends and strangers alike, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Alex than met the eye. Every glance, every smile, carried a subtle promise of something unknown, something thrilling and dangerous all at once. By the time the evening drew to a close, she realized she had accomplished what she had set out to do. She had turned heads, rekindled a spark of jealousy in Daniel, and, unexpectedly, found herself captivated by the man she had hired for a simple ruse. Yet, as they stepped outside into the cool night air, she noticed a change in Alex's demeanor. His playful charm had been replaced by a guarded, almost commanding presence, and for the first time, Emma felt a flicker of fear mixed with fascination. There was a power about him that she couldn't define, an undercurrent of danger that made her pulse quicken. She didn't know it then, but the man she had hired to play a role in her little scheme was far more than he appeared. Alex wasn't just a gigolo, he was someone whose world was filled with shadows, secrets, and influence, a world that Emma was about to be drawn into, whether she was ready or not. And as they parted ways that night, with promises to meet again under the pretense of her plan, Emma felt a thrilling sense of uncertainty. She had walked into the wedding expecting to play a game, but she was leaving with the undeniable feeling that her life had just taken a turn she could never have anticipated. The morning after the wedding, Emma woke to a quiet apartment that suddenly felt emptier than usual, the memory of last night still vivid in her mind. She couldn't stop replaying every glance, every touch, every whispered word from Alex. What had started as a simple plan to impress her ex had taken a turn she hadn't anticipated. Alex wasn't just playing a role, he had left an imprint on her thoughts, a presence that lingered long after he had gone. She sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee, her mind racing. The way he had watched her, the way he seemed to know exactly what to say to make her heart flutter, it was unnerving and intoxicating all at once. Emma tried to shake off the feelings of excitement mixed with anxiety, telling herself it was just part of the act, that she had hired him for a purpose and nothing more. Yet, a small voice inside her whispered that there was more to Alex than she had realized. That afternoon, her phone buzzed with a message, "Had a great night. Coffee tomorrow." The simplicity of the text sent her pulse skyrocketing. How did he already know how to make her feel a mix of anticipation and nervousness with a few words? She typed a quick, casual reply, trying to appear composed, but her fingers trembled slightly. The next day, when they met at a quiet downtown cafe, Alex was exactly as he had been at the wedding, polished, confident, and impossibly attentive. But this time, there was an edge to him, something subtle but undeniable. As they sipped their drinks, he leaned closer and asked questions that went beyond small talk, probing her thoughts, her ambitions, and even her fears. Emma felt a strange combination of exhilaration and unease. She had expected charming conversation, not this penetrating curiosity. And yet, she couldn't help but be drawn in, answering him honestly despite herself. There was an intensity about him that made the air between them feel charged, a tension that was thrilling and slightly terrifying. Over the next few days, Alex became a constant presence in her life, all under the guise of continuing their engagement, for the sake of appearances. He was always perfectly timed, appearing when she least expected it but most needed it. Friends who saw them together commented on how perfect they looked, how natural they seemed as a couple, but Emma noticed something else. Alex's eyes often scanned the surroundings, subtle and calculating, as if he were aware of things she couldn't see. One evening, as they walked through the city streets after a fancy dinner, a black car slowed beside them. Alex instinctively moved slightly in front of her, his hand brushing hers with a protective force that made her heart skip a beat. The driver stared for a moment, then drove away, and Emma realized she had never felt more vulnerable and simultaneously safe in her life. "Are you okay?" she asked, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. Alex gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile, but there was a weight behind his eyes that suggested this was far from a simple encounter. "I'm fine," he said, his tone calm but firm, and Emma sensed that whatever world he inhabited, it wasn't one she belonged to, yet. As days turned into weeks, the line between pretense and reality began to blur. Emma found herself thinking about Alex constantly, imagining what it would be like if their relationship were real. The fake fiancé she had hired to impress her ex had become the center of her own thoughts, desires, and fears. She caught herself smiling at his texts, laughing at his jokes, and longing for the moments when he would appear at her doorstep with that enigmatic charm that seemed impossible to resist. And yet, just when she allowed herself to feel comfortable, small things reminded her that Alex was not an ordinary man. A sharp tone in a phone call, a cryptic message, the way people seemed to subtly defer to him when he spoke, all hints of a life far removed from hers. Emma tried to push the thoughts aside, telling herself it didn't matter, that she could handle the complications, that she could enjoy this thrilling, intoxicating game without consequences. But deep down, she knew that the game had changed, that Alex was no longer just a role-playing companion, and that her heart, and perhaps her safety, was now entangled in something she barely understood. One evening, as they sat in her apartment watching the city lights flicker, Alex reached out and gently took her hand. "Emma," he said, his voice lower than usual, almost hesitant, "there's something you should know about me." Something I can't ignore any longer. Her stomach tightened. She had expected honesty at some point, but the tone in his voice, the seriousness in his gaze, made her feel both dread and anticipation. I'm listening, she whispered, her fingers tightening around his. Alex paused, studying her, then leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. I'm not exactly who you think I am, he said carefully. What do you mean? Emma asked, though a small part of her had already guessed. He looked away, his jaw tight, and then back at her with an intensity that made her heart race. I'm involved in things, complicated things. Dangerous things. Things that you wouldn't want to be a part of. Emma's mind raced, 1,000 questions forming at once. Dangerous. Like, what? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Alex hesitated, then let out a slow breath. Let's just say I have responsibilities that require discretion, influence, and a presence that most people wouldn't understand. I'm someone who operates in a world that's not always kind, and it's not easy to separate the man you see from the life I lead. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. Part of her wanted to pull away, to run from the unknown and frightening reality he hinted at. But another part, an undeniable, dangerous part, was drawn to him even more, intrigued by the mystery, captivated by the forbidden allure. That night, as Alex left her apartment, she watched him go with a mixture of fear and longing. She realized that she had stepped into a story far larger than she had intended, that her simple plan to impress her ex had led her into the orbit of a man who could change everything about her life. And as she closed the door behind him, Emma understood that the line between pretend and reality had not just blurred, it had vanished entirely, leaving her heart exposed, her curiosity ignited, and her future uncertain. One thing was clear, the man she had hired to play a part in her game was not just a companion. He was a force, a mystery, and a danger she couldn't ignore, and Emma had no idea just how deep into his world she was about to fall. The days that followed brought a strange mixture of excitement and tension into Emma's life, as she struggled to reconcile her growing feelings for Alex with the unsettling hints he had dropped about his dangerous world. Every time her phone buzzed with a message from him, her heart jumped, knowing that even a casual text carried a weight she couldn't fully comprehend. Alex was careful, precise, and enigmatic. He never revealed more than necessary, yet every word, every gesture, left her wanting to know more. Emma found herself imagining him not as the man she had hired for a pretend engagement, but as someone infinitely complex, someone who had secrets that could consume an ordinary life. She couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to step fully into his world, to see life through his eyes, though a part of her screamed that it was far too dangerous. The illusion of their engagement continued seamlessly in public. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers marveled at how natural they looked together, how their laughter seemed effortless, how they exuded a chemistry that few could ignore. Emma felt a mix of pride and anxiety with each compliment, knowing that beneath the surface, their connection was far more real than anyone could guess. Yet, behind Alex's charming smiles and protective gestures, there were moments when the intensity in his eyes reminded her that he was not just a man playing a part, he was a force she could neither predict nor control. One evening, as they left a high-end restaurant, Alex's phone buzzed with a message that made his smile vanish instantly. Emma noticed the shift immediately, the calm but deadly aura that suddenly surrounded him. He tucked the phone away, his hand brushing hers with a quick, almost apologetic touch, and she realized that this was more than a game, that Alex lived in a world where danger was never far behind. Is everything okay? She asked, trying to sound casual, but her voice betrayed the flicker of fear she felt. Alex gave her a reassuring smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. It's nothing you need to worry about, he said smoothly, but Emma had learned enough to know that when Alex said that, it often meant the opposite. That night, sleep eluded her. Every shadow in her apartment seemed to whisper secrets, and every sound outside her window carried an imagined threat. She couldn't stop thinking about Alex's warning, about the life he hinted at but refused to explain. She knew she was drawn to him, knew that the line between reality and the pretense of their engagement had blurred beyond recognition. Yet a small, cautious voice in her mind reminded her that passion and danger often traveled together, and she had no idea how much danger Alex truly carried. A week later, Emma found herself attending a charity gala with Alex. The night was glamorous, filled with sparkling gowns, elegant suits, and the hum of polite conversation. But Alex moved through the crowd with an ease that made her both proud and uneasy. People approached him with deference, and whispers followed in his wake. Emma noticed the subtle power he commanded, the invisible influence that seemed to bend the room around him, and she realized she had stepped into a world far beyond her own. As they danced in the grand ballroom, Emma felt the magnetic pull between them grow stronger. Alex's hands were firm on her waist, his eyes locked on hers, and she felt herself being drawn into a connection that was both thrilling and terrifying. Yet even as her heart soared, there was a shadow lingering in his gaze, a reminder that the man she was falling for carried burdens she could scarcely imagine. After the gala, Alex drove her home in silence. The hum of the engine and the quiet of the city streets gave the moment an intensity that was almost suffocating. "Emma," he finally said, his voice low and serious, "you have no idea what you're stepping into." Her breath caught. "I want to know," she said honestly, surprising even herself. "I don't care how dangerous it is. I want to be with you, no matter what." Alex's eyes softened for a fleeting second, a glimmer of warmth breaking through the guarded mask he wore so meticulously. "I admire your courage," he said, almost whispering, "but courage doesn't protect you from everything. There are people, situations, things, that could destroy you in ways you can't imagine." Emma felt the weight of his words, but she also felt a strange exhilaration. The thrill of the unknown, the pull of something forbidden, made her heart race and her resolve harden. She wasn't the same woman who had shown up at her ex's wedding hoping to play a game. She was someone ready to face challenges, someone willing to risk everything for the man who had captivated her completely. In the days that followed, Alex's world began to seep into hers in subtle, unnerving ways. Strange cars seemed to appear near her apartment, always just out of sight. People she didn't know glanced at her with a familiarity that felt unsettling. And Alex was always there, calm, protective, and unreadable, guiding her through situations she barely understood. Emma realized that the man she had hired for a simple ruse was not only real but also far more complicated and powerful than she could have imagined. The tension between them grew with every encounter, every touch, every lingering look. And yet, beneath the excitement, a quiet fear simmered. Emma knew she was walking a dangerous path, a path where the line between love and peril was razor thin. One afternoon, Alex invited her to a secluded location outside the city, a luxurious estate that seemed untouched by the chaos of the world. As they walked through the gardens, he finally revealed a piece of the truth she had been sensing all along. "Emma," he said carefully, "I am not just someone who operates in the shadows. I have responsibilities, influence, and enemies. People who would do anything to gain leverage, to threaten, to control." She nodded slowly, her heart pounding, yet she refused to show fear. "I'm not going anywhere," she said firmly. "I want to be here, with you, even if it's dangerous." Alex studied her, the intensity in his eyes making her stomach flutter. For the first time, he let down the smallest fraction of his guard. "I need you to understand what that means," he said. "Once you're involved, there's no turning back. It's not just about me, Emma. It's about everyone and everything connected to me." Emma felt the weight of his words, but her resolve didn't falter. She reached for his hand, holding it tightly. "I understand. And I choose to be with you anyway." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, the garden silent, the air thick with unspoken promises and dangers yet unseen. Emma realized she had stepped fully into Alex's world, not as a pretend fiancé, not as a player in a simple plan, but as someone who was about to experience a love that was as thrilling as it was perilous, a love that could change her life forever. And as they stood together, hands entwined, she felt a mixture of fear, excitement, and undeniable passion, knowing that her life had shifted in ways she could never have imagined, and that the journey with Alex, the real Alex, was only just beginning. The following days became a delicate dance between the ordinary and the extraordinary, as Emma tried to navigate her life while being pulled deeper into Alex's world, a world that was glamorous, dangerous, and intoxicating in equal measure. On the surface, she maintained the appearance of a successful young woman, attending work meetings, catching up with friends, and trying to convince herself that the strange cars and glances she occasionally noticed were coincidences. Yet beneath that veneer, her life had shifted entirely, shaped by the presence of Alex, who seemed to command every situation with effortless authority. Each interaction with him left her both breathless and unnervingly aware of her own vulnerability. One evening, he arrived at her apartment unannounced, dressed impeccably as always, but with an intensity in his eyes that made her stomach twist. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low, serious. Emma nodded, sensing the gravity in his tone. They drove to a private rooftop overlooking the city, the skyline glittering beneath them, and for a moment, the night seemed suspended between reality and something almost surreal. Alex began to explain a little more about his life, hinting at his influence, his responsibilities, and the unseen forces that constantly demanded his attention. He didn't give specifics, he never did, but the weight of his words alone was enough to make Emma's heart pound. "I didn't want you to be involved," he admitted, his voice softer now, almost regretful. "But once you stepped into my world, there was no turning back. You see a glimpse now, but there's much more, much darker, much more dangerous." Emma swallowed hard, but her gaze never wavered. "I knew this could be risky," she said, "but I trust you. I'm not leaving." Alex studied her, his expression unreadable, then allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You're braver than most," he said, "and I admire that. But bravery doesn't protect you from everything, Emma. You need to be prepared." That night, Emma couldn't sleep, her mind alive with thoughts of Alex, of his world, of the danger and allure that seemed inseparable from him. Every text he sent, every visit he made, carried layers she couldn't decode, and yet she was addicted to the mystery, to the excitement, and to the undeniable connection growing between them. As the weeks passed, Emma found herself accompanying Alex more often, attending private dinners, exclusive events, and discreet meetings that hinted at the influence he wielded. Everywhere they went, people treated him with respect and caution, acknowledging his presence as if it were a force of nature. She began to notice subtle signs, the way he scanned every room for potential threats, how he made quick, decisive decisions, how even a casual conversation seemed to command attention. Emma was both in awe and terrified, realizing that the man she had hired to play a role in her plan was far beyond anyone she had ever known. Yet, amid the tension and the hints of danger, their connection deepened. Small moments, an unexpected touch, a whispered compliment, a protective glance, made her feel seen and cherished in ways she hadn't experienced before. She began to understand that Alex's world was not only perilous but also intensely private, a life that allowed very few inside, and that by being with him, she was stepping into an entirely new existence. One evening, as they drove through the quiet city streets after a late meeting, Alex spoke again about the risks. "There are people who won't hesitate to use anyone close to me to get what they want," he said, his eyes fixed on the road. "That includes you." Emma's heart raced, but she gripped his hand tightly. "I'm not afraid," she whispered. "I want to be with you, no matter what." Alex exhaled slowly, a mix of relief and concern in his expression. "I've never met anyone like you," he admitted. "Most people would run. Most people would be terrified. But you stay, even knowing the truth, even knowing the danger." Emma realized in that moment that she had changed. The woman who had attended her ex's wedding with a fake fiancé had evolved into someone strong, someone courageous, someone ready to face challenges head-on. Her heart and mind were entangled with Alex's world, and there was no turning back. Over the next few days, Emma began to notice small but significant shifts in her life. Certain strangers seemed to recognize her, giving fleeting, calculating glances. Her phone occasionally vibrated with messages from unknown numbers, cryptic and slightly threatening. And through it all, Alex was a constant presence, always protective, always calculating, always watching. One afternoon, as they sat in his luxurious apartment overlooking the city, Alex finally allowed her a glimpse of the depth of his world. "There are alliances, deals, and threats you can't imagine," he said. "People in my life wield power, influence, and danger. I operate in shadows you can't see, and sometimes those shadows reach closer than you realize." Emma nodded slowly, her pulse quickening. She had expected challenges, but the reality of Alex's life was more intense than she had anticipated. Yet, she didn't pull away. Instead, she felt a strange exhilaration, a sense of belonging she hadn't felt before. "I'm here, Alex," she said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere." He looked at her for a long moment, his expression a mix of admiration, caution, and something deeper she couldn't define. "I hope you understand what that means," he said finally. Once you're involved, there's no simple path back. There's no ordinary life waiting for you. Emma took a deep breath, letting the weight of his words settle. I understand, she said. And I choose to be with you anyway. That night, as she lay in bed, she realized the truth she had been avoiding. She was in love with Alex. Not the man she had hired to impress her ex, not the charming facade she had initially believed him to be, but the real Alex, the man of mystery, danger, and undeniable magnetism. She knew her life had changed irrevocably, that her heart was now entwined with someone whose world she barely understood, and that every choice from this point forward carried consequences she could not predict. And yet, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, she felt a thrill she had never known, a deep sense of connection that made her willing to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Emma understood that she was no longer a passive observer in her own life. She had stepped fully into a story filled with love, danger, and intrigue, a story where the line between reality and fantasy had blurred, and where the man she had once hired for a ruse had become the center of her world, and the keeper of her heart. Emma's life had become a delicate balance between normalcy and the thrilling chaos that seemed to follow Alex wherever he went. Each day brought new surprises, some exhilarating, others unnerving, but she had grown accustomed to the constant undercurrent of tension that came with being close to him. She couldn't remember the last time she had experienced such a mix of fear, excitement, and deep, undeniable attraction. It had started as a simple plan to impress her ex at his wedding, a harmless ruse meant to make a statement, but now she found herself entangled in a reality far more complicated than she had ever imagined. Alex was no longer just a charming companion, he was a man of influence, power, and secrets, and she was beginning to understand the weight of being part of his life. One evening, they attended a high-profile event in the city, a gala that drew powerful figures from every industry. Emma felt a thrill as they entered, her hand in Alex's, feeling the invisible force of respect and fear that seemed to radiate from him. People whispered as they passed, casting glances that were a mix of admiration and caution. Emma realized she was no longer just accompanying a charming figure, she was stepping into a world where every glance, every word, and every movement mattered. As the night progressed, Alex's attention remained unwaveringly on her, yet his eyes constantly scanned the room, alert to every subtle shift, every sign of potential trouble. Emma admired his ability to remain composed, to exude calm and control even in an environment charged with tension and ambition. Despite the danger that seemed to lurk in every corner, she felt a strange sense of security in his presence, a reassurance that whatever threats existed, Alex would navigate them with precision. After the event, as they walked through quiet streets under the glow of streetlights, Emma finally dared to ask the question that had been on her mind for weeks. Alex, why me? Why did you agree to help me with a ruse that could have been so simple, so fleeting? He looked at her, his gaze intense and unreadable. Because there was something about you, he said slowly, something that went beyond appearances or plans. Most people are easily intimidated or distracted by my world. You weren't. You faced it, embraced it, and even with everything unknown, you chose to step closer rather than run away. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mix of pride, surprise, and growing affection. She had started this journey seeking to impress her ex, but now she understood that her life had shifted irreversibly, drawn into a gravity she hadn't anticipated. Days turned into weeks, and Emma began to see the depth of Alex's influence more clearly. Strange messages, subtle threats, and moments of tension reminded her that danger was never far away. Yet, Alex always remained a shield around her, calm, precise, and protective, guiding her through situations she barely understood. She realized she had come to trust him completely, placing her safety, her heart, and her future in his hands without hesitation. One afternoon, they drove to a secluded estate outside the city, a place Alex used for private meetings and strategic planning. Emma felt the weight of entering his world more fully than ever before. Inside, Alex introduced her to a few trusted associates, people who were loyal, careful, and deeply respectful of him. They treated Emma with cautious politeness, their eyes subtly assessing her as someone new in a world they rarely allowed outsiders to enter. Emma's heart raced, not just from the novelty of the situation, but from the realization that she was truly becoming a part of Alex's life, his world, and the intricate web of influence he navigated every day. As they sat in a private room overlooking the estate, Alex spoke of the responsibilities he carried, the dangers that always lurked, and the delicate balance of power he maintained. Emma listened carefully, absorbing every word, understanding the gravity of being close to someone whose life was so tightly interwoven with influence, secrecy, and danger. I can't protect you from everything, Alex said finally, his eyes locking with hers. There are threats that even I cannot see coming. But I will do everything I can to keep you safe, to keep you close, and to ensure that you are never caught off guard. Emma felt her pulse quicken at his words, both from the gravity of his warnings and from the intimacy of his confession. She reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. I don't need to be protected from everything, she said softly. I just need to be with you. For the first time, Alex's expression softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through the controlled, guarded exterior he always wore. You have no idea what that means, he murmured, his voice low and intense. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions, events, and experiences that Emma had never imagined. She accompanied Alex to important meetings, discreet gatherings, and private negotiations, each one a glimpse into a world filled with power, tension, and subtle danger. She watched as Alex commanded respect effortlessly, navigated threats with precision, and maintained control over situations that would overwhelm most people. And yet, through it all, he remained deeply connected to her, protective and attentive in ways that made her heart race. One evening, as they returned from a particularly tense meeting, Alex parked the car in a quiet spot overlooking the city lights. He turned to her, his gaze intense, and said, Emma, I need to know that you understand the world you're stepping into. It's not a game. It's not a romance story. This is my life, and it's complicated, dangerous, and often unforgiving. Emma nodded, her grip on his hand tightening. I understand, she said firmly. And I choose to be here. With you. Alex studied her for a long moment, as if measuring her courage, her resolve, and her readiness to face the challenges ahead. Finally, he allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile to grace his lips. You're stronger than I thought, he admitted. And braver than I could have hoped for. That night, as Emma lay in her bed, her thoughts raced with everything that had happened, the gala, the estate, the meetings, the subtle threats, and, most importantly, Alex. She realized she had come to care for him deeply, that her heart was fully entwined with a man whose world was complex, thrilling, and dangerous. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges, fears, and uncertainties. But she also knew that with Alex by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The woman who had once attended her ex's wedding with a fake fiancé had grown into someone courageous, bold, and unafraid to embrace the unknown. And as she drifted off to sleep, a sense of anticipation mixed with excitement filled her heart, knowing that her journey with Alex, the real Alex, was only just beginning, and that the love, danger, and adventure that awaited them would change her life forever. Emma's life had transformed into a whirlwind of emotions, intrigue, and subtle dangers she had never anticipated, yet somehow, she had never felt more alive. Days blended into nights filled with the hum of city lights, quiet conversations, and the ever-present magnetic pull of Alex, whose presence had become an anchor in her otherwise ordinary world. Each morning, she awoke with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety, knowing that the day would bring encounters with power, secrecy, and a thrilling intimacy she could not resist. Alex's world was not one she could have imagined from the start, its glamour and danger intertwined in a way that made every moment with him pulse with intensity. One afternoon, as they walked through the quiet corridors of a private gallery hosting an exclusive exhibition, Emma felt herself constantly aware of her surroundings, noting the subtle glances of strangers, the way certain men whispered in corners, and the almost imperceptible tension in the air. Alex guided her effortlessly, his hand brushing hers occasionally, the contact light yet grounding, a reminder that even amid uncertainty, she was safe with him. He introduced her to a few people, and while conversations remained polite, Emma could sense the underlying currents of influence, power, and respect that followed Alex wherever he went. There was a rhythm to his life, a carefully orchestrated balance of appearances and reality, and Emma realized that she was now a part of it. That evening, as they left the gallery and walked toward their car, Alex's phone buzzed with a discreet alert. He glanced at it, his expression darkening slightly, and she knew instinctively that this was not a trivial message. Everything okay? She asked cautiously. Alex's jaw tightened, though he quickly relaxed, giving her a calm, almost reassuring smile. It's nothing you need to worry about, he said smoothly, but Emma had learned enough to know that in Alex's world, nothing often carried consequences she could not yet foresee. The ride home was quiet, the city lights casting fleeting shadows across their faces, and Emma felt the tension in the car, a mixture of unspoken danger and the undeniable intimacy between them. You really have no idea, Alex said softly after a pause, his eyes briefly meeting hers before returning to the road, what it means to have someone close in my life. People notice, people judge, and sometimes, they act. But with you, I feel something different. Something worth protecting. Emma's heart skipped a beat. The admission, though carefully measured, sent a warmth through her chest, a reassurance that amid the dangers, there was a genuine connection growing between them. Over the next few days, Emma found herself increasingly entwined in Alex's life. She accompanied him to meetings with influential figures, attended private dinners in lavish locations, and observed the way he effortlessly navigated conversations filled with subtle power plays and unspoken agreements. Every interaction reinforced the reality she had slowly come to accept. Alex's world was a place of influence and authority, where even a small misstep could have consequences she could scarcely imagine. Yet, despite the intensity, she felt exhilarated. She realized that she was no longer the same woman who had once planned a simple ruse for her ex's wedding. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more attuned to the subtleties of Alex's world, and she had willingly chosen to step fully into it. One evening, as they returned to Alex's private estate, he led her to a quiet terrace overlooking the city skyline. The lights shimmered like 1,000 tiny stars, and for a moment, the chaos of their lives felt distant, almost manageable. Emma, he said, his voice low. Deliberate, I need to be honest. There are times when being close to me will be frightening, even overwhelming. There will be moments when you won't understand, when you'll feel powerless or unsure. But I need you to know that my feelings for you are real. What we have, it's not just temporary, or for appearances. It's genuine. Emma felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of relief, excitement, and love. She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. I don't need things to be easy, Alex, she said softly. I just need to be with you. He studied her for a long moment, the intensity in his eyes making her pulse quicken, then allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile to grace his face. You're extraordinary, he whispered, stronger than anyone I've ever met. And braver than I could have imagined. Their connection deepened with each passing day. Emma discovered that Alex's world, while filled with risk and secrecy, also had moments of unexpected tenderness. He would leave small notes for her, send brief texts during tense meetings, and occasionally take her to secluded places where the two of them could simply exist without the pressures of influence, expectation, or danger. These moments became her lifeline, reminders that beneath the layers of power and secrecy, Alex was a man capable of profound care and genuine affection. Yet, as thrilling as these moments were, Emma never forgot the stakes. Subtle threats, cryptic warnings, and the occasional unexplained tension reminded her constantly that Alex's life was one of complexity and risk. There were forces at play she did not fully understand, yet she felt compelled to stay, driven by love, curiosity, and the undeniable connection that had formed between them. One afternoon, as they walked through a quiet park, Alex paused and turned to her, his expression serious. Emma, you need to know something important, he said, his voice steady yet firm. Being close to me means being prepared for the unexpected. There are people who would use anything, anyone, to get to me. And I cannot always protect you from everything. But I promise this, I will always do everything I can to keep you safe, to keep you close, and to ensure you are never caught off guard. Emma looked into his eyes, feeling the weight of his words and the sincerity behind them. I understand, she said. And I choose to stay. With you. No matter what. Alex studied her for a long, lingering moment, then nodded, a mixture of respect, admiration, and affection in his gaze. That night, as Emma lay in her bed, she reflected on everything that had happened over the past weeks. She realized that her simple plan to hire a fake fiancé had led her to a life and a love she had never imagined, filled with intensity, intrigue, and danger. She understood that she was no longer just a participant in a game, she was an active part of Alex's world, a world where love and risk were inseparable. And despite the uncertainty, despite the fear, she felt a deep, unshakable sense of belonging. Her heart was intertwined with Alex's, and she knew that their journey together, full of passion, challenges, and thrilling unpredictability, was only just beginning. She had chosen this life, chosen him, and as she drifted off to sleep, she felt a mixture of excitement and anticipation, knowing that the days ahead would test their courage, deepen their connection, and reveal the true strength of their bond. Emma had stepped fully into Alex's world, and there was no turning back. Every choice, every moment, and every heartbeat now belonged to the story they were writing together, a story of love, danger, and the unbreakable pull of two hearts destined to collide. Emma's days had settled into a rhythm that was as exhilarating as it was unpredictable, a constant balancing act between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Every morning brought a renewed awareness of Alex's world, the subtle power, the unspoken rules, and the ever-present hint of danger that hovered just beneath the surface. Yet amid all this, their connection had grown deeper, more intimate, and unshakably real. The thrill of being part of his life, witnessing firsthand the influence and respect he commanded, made Emma feel both alive and profoundly connected to him in ways she had never imagined. One afternoon, Alex invited her to a private estate on the outskirts of the city, a place she had been before but never fully explored. The sprawling property, with its manicured gardens and high walls, seemed almost otherworldly, a haven of secrecy and luxury hidden from prying eyes. Emma followed him through the quiet corridors, feeling a mixture of anticipation and nervousness as she realized she was stepping further into the heart of Alex's life, a life full of responsibilities, threats, and unspoken rules. They arrived in a dimly lit room, the soft glow of chandeliers casting a warm light over the sleek furniture and tasteful decor. Alex motioned for her to sit, his expression serious yet gentle, as if he were about to reveal something significant. Emma, he began, his voice low and deliberate, there are things in my world that you don't yet understand. People who would do anything to gain an advantage, to manipulate, or to hurt those close to me. I've tried to keep you distant from these realities, but the truth is, you're now a part of it whether you like it or not. Emma's heart raced, but she met his gaze steadily. I know it's dangerous, she said, and I know there's more than I understand. But I'm not stepping back. I want to be with you, no matter what. Alex studied her for a long moment, his eyes reflecting a mixture of admiration, caution, and a subtle, almost imperceptible vulnerability. You're stronger than I ever expected, he murmured. And braver than I could have hoped for. But I need you to be careful, Emma. My world isn't forgiving, and there are forces you cannot yet see. Despite the warnings, Emma felt a sense of determination and courage she hadn't known before. She had entered this world willingly, and she would face whatever came with Alex by her side. Over the next few days, she began to see more clearly the layers of Alex's influence. Meetings with high-powered figures, discreet conversations that carried weight far beyond the words spoken, and subtle gestures that commanded respect all illustrated the breadth and depth of his world. Emma observed with awe how he navigated these interactions with effortless grace and precision, a man in complete control of his environment, yet always mindful of the people he cared about. She felt a deep sense of pride in being allowed to witness, and to some extent participate in, this world, an extraordinary privilege, and one that she approached with both excitement and careful attention. One evening, Alex took her to a quiet rooftop overlooking the city skyline. The night air was crisp, the lights of the city flickering like distant stars below them. Emma, he said, his voice steady but imbued with a rare softness, I want you to know something important. Being close to me isn't just thrilling or exciting, it's serious. There are responsibilities, dangers, and choices that will affect both of us. And you need to understand that being here, with me, is a decision that cannot be undone. Emma felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of resolve, love, and an almost reckless thrill. I understand, she said, her voice calm but firm. And I choose to be with you, no matter the risks. I trust you, Alex. And I'm not leaving. Alex's expression softened, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. You amaze me, he whispered. Most people would never dare. Most would run from what they don't understand. But you face it, and you embrace it. That courage is rare, Emma. And it's why I feel something real for you. Something I can't ignore. As they stood there, the city lights stretching endlessly below them, Emma realized that their connection had moved beyond the pretense of a fake engagement. What had begun as a ruse to impress her ex had evolved into a profound bond, one that combined trust, love, and the exhilarating edge of danger. Each day she spent with Alex revealed more about the man behind the polished exterior, a man of depth, passion, and unyielding strength. Yet she also became increasingly aware of the precariousness of their situation. The subtle threats, the mysterious figures that occasionally crossed their path, and the underlying tension of his world reminded her that the life she had chosen was far from ordinary. One evening, after a particularly intense day, Alex led her to a secluded garden on the estate. The air was fragrant with blooming flowers, and the quiet rustle of leaves provided a momentary escape from the pressures of their lives. Emma, he said softly, taking both her hands in his, I need you to know that whatever happens, whatever threats come our way, I will always do everything I can to protect you. But you also need to be aware that the world I live in doesn't forgive easily. Once you're in it, there's no turning back. Emma felt the weight of his words, but also the thrill of commitment, love, and courage. I understand, she said, her eyes locking with his. And I choose to face it all with you. I'm not afraid. He leaned closer, brushing a gentle kiss against her forehead, a gesture both tender and protective. In that moment, Emma felt the full magnitude of her feelings, love, trust, desire, and an unwavering commitment to the man who had come to dominate not just her thoughts, but her heart. Over the following days, Emma became more integrated into Alex's world. She attended discreet gatherings, observed negotiations, and quietly learned to navigate the subtleties of influence and power that defined his life. Each encounter reinforced the realization that Alex was not just a figure of charm or mystery, but a man of extraordinary capability and complex layers. And yet, despite the challenges, their love grew stronger, built on trust, shared experiences, and the mutual understanding that their bond was unlike any other. One night, as they walked through the quiet city streets after a private meeting, Alex stopped, pulling her close. Emma, he said, his voice steady yet filled with emotion, you've changed my life more than you can imagine. Your courage, your trust, your willingness to be part of my world, it means everything to me. Emma smiled softly, her heart swelling with affection and determination. And you've changed mine, Alex, she replied. I've never felt more alive, more understood, or more certain of what I want. I choose you, every day, no matter the risks. He held her close, the city lights casting long shadows around them, and for a brief, perfect moment, the world seemed to pause. The thrill of danger, the intensity of love, and the deep connection they shared made Emma realize that her journey had only just begun. What had started as a simple, playful scheme to impress her ex had transformed into a life of passion, adventure, and unshakable love. And as they stood together, hands entwined, hearts aligned, and futures uncertain but intertwined, Emma knew with absolute certainty that she would face whatever came next, side by side with Alex, the man who had become her world, her love, and her protector. Emma's life had become a thrilling mix of love, danger, and unshakable devotion, a reality she had never imagined when she first attended her ex's wedding with a fake fiancé. What had begun as a clever ruse to make a statement had evolved into a profound journey, one that had entwined her heart, mind, and soul with Alex in ways that were both exhilarating and terrifying. Each day she spent with him revealed new layers of his world, the subtle power plays, the hidden threats, the careful navigation of influence and authority, and yet, amid all of this, she felt safer, stronger, and more alive than ever before. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, Alex led her to the edge of his private estate, where a secluded terrace overlooked the city lights. The air was crisp, carrying a quiet serenity that seemed almost impossible given the intensity of their lives. Emma, he said softly, his voice steady yet filled with emotion, there are things you still don't fully understand about my world. There are dangers, enemies, and people who would do anything to gain leverage or influence over me. I can't always protect you from everything, but I can promise that I will never stop trying. Emma looked into his eyes, her pulse quickening. I understand, she replied firmly, and I'm ready. I trust you completely, Alex. I've chosen this life, this love, and I'm not stepping back now. He studied her for a long moment, his expression reflecting admiration, caution, and a rare vulnerability. You amaze me every day, he murmured. Your courage, your determination, and your heart, it's unlike anything I've ever known. And it's why I want you by my side, in every sense of the word, no matter what comes our way. Over the following weeks, Emma became increasingly involved in Alex's life, not just as a companion but as someone he trusted implicitly. She attended discreet meetings where negotiations and subtle maneuvers shaped outcomes far beyond what she could see. She learned to read the nuances in conversations, to notice the smallest shifts in tone or expression, and to appreciate the careful strategy that defined Alex's every action. Through it all, Alex remained her protector, her guide, and her confidant, always mindful of her presence yet encouraging her growth and understanding. One night, after a particularly tense series of events, Alex invited her to a quiet garden within the estate. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting soft shadows, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause, leaving only the two of them in a space of intimacy and trust. Emma, he said, taking her hands in his, being with me means embracing everything, the power, the influence, the dangers, and the responsibilities. It's not an ordinary life, but it's ours, and I want you to know that I'm committed to us, no matter the challenges. Emma felt a warmth and certainty fill her chest. I'm ready, Alex, she said softly, her eyes reflecting unwavering trust and love. I want this life with you. I want us, no matter what comes. That night marked a turning point in their relationship, a moment where the boundaries between fear, excitement, and deep affection dissolved, leaving only the undeniable bond between them. Over the next days and weeks, they faced challenges that tested their trust, courage, and resilience. Subtle threats emerged, mysterious figures appeared, and situations demanded quick thinking and careful action. Yet through every obstacle, Alex remained a steady presence, guiding, protecting, and sharing the weight of the decisions that shaped their lives. Emma, in turn, grew stronger, more confident, and deeply aware of her own capability to navigate this complex world. The fake engagement that had started as a playful plan had long been replaced by genuine love, unwavering loyalty, and a bond forged through shared experiences, danger, and trust. Alex's world was no longer an abstract concept, it was a reality Emma embraced fully, knowing that love, while thrilling, also demanded courage, resilience, and commitment. One evening, as they stood together overlooking the city from the terrace of the estate, Alex pulled her close, their bodies pressed together, the quiet hum of the city below them a backdrop to their shared moment. Emma, he whispered, his lips brushing her ear, you've changed my life in ways I never imagined. You've shown me trust, love, and courage I didn't know I needed. And I want you to know that no matter what comes next, I'll always have your back, as I know you'll have mine. Emma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness but from the overwhelming depth of emotion and gratitude. And I'll always be here, Alex, she whispered back. I choose you, now and always. Their connection, forged through trust, love, and shared challenges, had reached a level where words were often unnecessary. A single glance, a gentle touch, or a quiet gesture communicated volumes, reflecting the depth of their bond and the unwavering commitment that had developed between them. Days turned into weeks, and Emma's integration into Alex's world became seamless. She no longer felt like an outsider or a participant in a game, she was a partner, a confidant, and an essential part of the life they shared. The glamour, the subtle danger, and the intensity of his influence became a backdrop to their relationship, enhancing the connection rather than overshadowing it. One night, during a quiet moment at the estate, Alex finally allowed himself to speak freely about the life he had built, the challenges he faced, and the people who depended on him. Emma, he said, his voice filled with sincerity, there are burdens I carry that are difficult to explain. But you've shown me that love and trust can coexist with responsibility and influence. You've given me something I didn't know I needed, a partner who understands, who cares, and who stands beside me without hesitation. Emma felt a profound sense of belonging, a realization that she had not only found love but had discovered a life that challenged her, excited her, and gave her purpose. And I'll always be here, she said softly, through every challenge, every risk, and every moment of joy or uncertainty. I'm yours, Alex, completely and without reservation. As the months passed, their love deepened, their trust strengthened, and their lives intertwined in ways neither had anticipated. Emma had grown into a woman of courage, confidence, and resilience, shaped by the experiences and challenges that came with being close to Alex. And Alex, in turn, had allowed himself to open, to share vulnerability, and to embrace a love that was genuine, passionate, and transformative. In the end, what had begun as a playful scheme to impress an ex had become the foundation for a love story marked by adventure, trust, and the unbreakable bond of two people willing to face the unknown together. Emma had discovered not just romance, but partnership, strength, and a life that was thrilling, unpredictable, and deeply fulfilling. And as they stood together, overlooking the city lights that shimmered like countless tiny stars, she knew without a doubt that no matter what the future held, she and Alex would face it side by side, their hearts bound by love, trust, and the shared courage to embrace a life that was extraordinary in every way.